Good morning, and thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Becky Siekmeyer, and I'm the Director of the SciTechsperience Internship Program at the Minnesota High-Tech Association. I'm here today with my colleague, Jonah Kaplan, and Caroline Karanja of 26 Letters to talk about how you can maximize your job descriptions to compete for great talent. This webinar is part of the SciTechsperience webinar series and is co-hosted by 26 Letters, SciTechsperience, and the Minnesota High-Tech Association. So before we get started, let's cover a few housekeeping items. You've dialed in by phone, or if you've dialed in by phone, please select telephone and enter your audio PIN number in the audio panel to eliminate any echo. And if you're having any technical or sound issues, please contact GoToWebinar at the link shown on the screen, or you can give them a call at 1-877-582-7011. Everyone has joined this webinar in listen-only mode, which means everyone but the organizers are muted. So please use the questions window in the control panel at any time. Jonah will be monitoring this box throughout the webinar. If you'd like to review this webinar later, a recording will be posted on our website, scitechmn.org, and we'll also be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording after the webinar is completed. So as I mentioned, today's webinar is part of the SciTechsperience webinar series. SciTechsperience is an internship program that connects small Minnesota businesses in high-tech sectors like science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing with college STEM majors for paid internship opportunities in their companies. This is a statewide program. It's funded by an appropriation from the Minnesota State Legislature. The program grant is managed by DEED and administered by the Minnesota High-Tech Association, known to many people as MHTA. In 2017, the legislature appropriated $2 million for SciTechsperience during the 2016 and 2017 biennium. This funding provides employers with a cash reimbursement of 50% of their interns' wages, and the reimbursement is worth up to $2,500. As of today, there are fewer than 190 wage matches available for 2017. You can learn more about the program and enroll at scitechmn.org or by contacting me, Becky Siekmeyer, or my colleague, Jonah Kaplan. All right, so why are we talking about job descriptions? That's because job descriptions are often your company's first introduction to prospective interns or employees. With Minnesota's low unemployment rate and so many companies competing for great science, technology, and engineering talent, it's really important to put your best foot forward right out of the gate. I'd like to introduce today's guest, Caroline Karanja. Caroline is an entrepreneur in Minneapolis. She is the founder of 26 Letters, an employee engagement and inclusion software as a service solution that helps companies understand and increase the engagement of their employees and incorporate diversity and inclusion into their organizations. Caroline is also a speaker and has presented at conferences and organizations across the country, including AlterConf and Stripe. Welcome, Caroline. Thanks so much for joining me today. Before we get started, would you please share the story behind the name 26 Letters? I think it's such a fun name.
Thank you, Becky, for the kind introduction, and I'm happy to be here today. 26 Letters has a number of different meanings. First, I began the mission around this work to pursue this work full-time when I was 26 years old, so that's part of it. 26 also happens to be one of my favorite numbers, and at 26 Letters, we believe that communication is at the core of what we do, and we're really working to build those strong communication skills. The 26 Letters, being the number of letters in the alphabet, in the English alphabet, was a great fit for a name.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. So we're going to be covering 4 key things in the webinar today. The first one is how to brand your company in your job descriptions and create a narrative that really tells your story. People need to know who you are. We're also going to talk about how to write an inclusion statement and use language that attracts a diverse pool of candidates. We're also going to be covering the methodology and the building blocks behind composing effective job descriptions. And finally, how to emphasize the reciprocal relationship between interns and employees. This is a two-way thing. So again, everyone, if you have questions during the presentation, please type them into that questions box at any time. And with that, here's Caroline.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to start off here with a quick introduction to 26 letters. Oh, there we go. 26 letters, our mission again is to build inclusion and to build really engaging work cultures. Our platform allows organizations to assess the engagement level of their organization and offers action and data-driven next steps to increase this engagement. You know, what we're really looking is to give companies essentially the tools that they need to be successful, to continue to innovate, and to continue to be relevant in the market. And so jumping into what we're all here for, which is how to write great job descriptions. So one of the things that we focus on at 26 is writing really great job descriptions. This is usually the first step in terms of getting acquainted with a position, but sometimes this is part of the recruiting process that gets minimal attention. Job descriptions, they give individuals an idea of the company, an overview of the culture, and should have a firm definition of the core parts of that position. And by the way, a lot of the things that we talk about here today are applicable across the board. This isn't just for intern positions, but you can use this for most other positions.
So Caroline, why is it important for companies to write a good job description?
It's really important because for some individuals, this might be the first time that they're applying to jobs, right, especially with internships. And having a good idea of the position helps people on both sides of the equation really get a great experience out of it. And so, you know, when we're talking about for companies, this means that they're able to define internally exactly what their needs are, right? And so if you're writing really clear and concise job descriptions, you need to understand what it is that you're looking for. It helps set expectations within the organization and within the staff that will be interacting with the intern. And it also helps define the day-to-day activities or responsibilities of that intern. For the intern's perspective, this means that they're essentially able to see whether or not they're really interested in the things that they'll be doing day in and day out. It allows them to see whether or not their skill set, what they bring to the table is applicable, and if it's something that they can leverage in order to learn more. And it also helps them assess exactly what the learning curve will be in terms of what kind of software they'll be using, what languages they'll be coding in if that's what they're doing, but essentially like how they'll be interacting with other software and individuals within your organization. Is there a steep learning curve? Is there something that they know that they can do and excel at and bring value back to the organization? And so let's look at the layout for this job description. So here we have the company or the statements, which we'll get into. We have a candidate profile, which essentially is asking, are you excited about this? This kind of being whatever the work is going to be. What prior experience do you have? Are you a good match for us? Are we a good match for you? What are the day-to-day responsibilities again? And then in turn, these are the benefits, and unique experiences or the advantages that you'll get from this position. And then of course, the application instructions. And so, you know, when you write this out, it doesn't have to be in this specific order, but you can use this more as a checklist. And this has a nice flow to it as it's set up currently. And so first, we'll take an overview of exactly what that company statement looks like.
Why did you include the terms voice and tone in the subtitle? These sound more like branding and marketing terms and not so much human resources.
Yeah, that's a great question, Becky. So job descriptions are really how you sell candidates on your company. So in many ways, this is about branding and marketing for your company. And just like the services and the products that your companies offer, you need to communicate what is unique and what value you add or you bring to the table for that candidate who's applying to work there. So for small businesses, this is crucial because you may be competing with the same talent or competing for the same talent in some of these larger firms or organizations who have more of a presence, more of a brand. And so by using that voice or tone or the brand essence to give your company description some personality and make the job description more engaging, you're kind of giving yourself an extra leg up. And so you want by the time that someone is done reading through this job description that they'll be so excited to apply to your company. They'll have a really clear idea of what it'll be like to be there, and they can't wait to jump in there and hear back from you. So let's jump into exactly what this looks like for this company statement, right? So a couple of things you want to identify right off the bat is that if you can actually write these down, what is my company's mission or their vision, or some organizations have both. What are the core values that we follow? What are the things that we believe we are doing to make the world a better place? What is the key product or the service that we offer? Obviously, some organizations have a wealth of products and services, but what is that key thing that really makes you unique? And what's a story that you might share with a prospective candidate? So this might be, a great story by the co-founder about how they got started, or a great experience that you, as someone who's recruiting candidates, have experienced, or if there's just like a general company story that can be told to help, again, communicate that culture piece. That's really important. And so if you have a shared template across HR or your hiring team of these things, what the mission is, the vision, the core values, that key product services, that one story, you'll be able to create a more consistent HR sort of branding experience for people who are looking for jobs within your organization, and also helps create a unified tone and company brand, right? And more importantly, it means that you're starting to tell the same story regardless of who that candidate is talking to. So if they're talking to the head of HR or someone in the hiring team, that message is consistent. And so the template for this is fairly straightforward. It's simply our mission is to. We do this by providing blank, and then we value. And by the way, in the email that goes out, you'll have a PDF with these all laid out. So you don't have to write this down, but just something to keep in mind as we go through. So this is an example of a company description that essentially communicates the culture of the organization, right? So this first part, it says at Sample Media we have, this is for a Sample Media company. So at Sample Media we have high journalistic standards, and we value a creative lens that takes journalism to the next level. We have a community of producers, editors, writers, and hosts who advocate for each other, their projects, and our audience. Right. The second part really outlines the core values, and it reads, positivity, creativity, quality, and curiosity are some of our cultural values. We look for leaders and thinkers who can elevate the quality of content and act decisively with sound news judgment. And this last piece is really doing a couple of different things. And it reads, the work we do is challenging. We have daily deadlines, program calendars, and adhere to, most importantly, a public that looks to us for answers. So this last section is actually doing a number of different things that I kind of want to point out here. It's setting expectations in terms of how demanding the position can be. It's establishing some core personalities that the candidates need to be successful at the job, such as someone who's comfortable being social and can go out and establish and build relationships. And overall, this is a great statement, because if you apply to work here, you know exactly what it is that you're getting into regardless of the position. And so it gives you a great overview of the type of workload, the kind of culture, and sort of the core operating principles of this organization. The other type of statement you can have is a culture, diversity, and inclusion statement. I really, really encourage organizations to have one of these. And so even more than that, having a statement like this allows you to stand out from other potential places that candidates might be applying to. And it gives them an opportunity to see where your organization stands on these topics, especially if you're looking to actively engage a more diverse candidate pool.
So I just want to remind people to go ahead and type their questions into the question box at any point. And I do have a question for you, Caroline. How is this statement different from the company statement that we just walked through?
Yeah, so every company should have a clear company statement. That to me is kind of a given. But a culture, diversity, and/or inclusion statement, in another way, it's just providing additional information to the candidates about your organization. And by that, having the statement, your organization is saying something about how they value diversity and inclusion and exactly what kind of culture they're looking to build. because studies have shown, of course, that culture is one of the defining factors in terms of being successful as a company, as an organization, as a nonprofit. And so having the diversity inclusion statement, that can simply be an additional 1 or 2 sentences at the end of your company statement. So the two are closely related. I think that having this particular statement just makes you stand out more as an organization. So let's take a break here and take a poll. And of those of you who are out there, does your company have a culture, diversity, or inclusion statement? So you can either answer yes, it does, no, it doesn't, or I'm not really sure. And we'll leave this open for about 15 seconds and see what the response rates are. Awesome. Yep, just a few more seconds here as we watch the results come in. Okay, great. And as you can see here from the polls, 47% of you said no, 20% said yes, and 33% said not sure. So this is something you definitely want to reach out if you are part of the human resources team or the people team. Reach out and see whether or not your company does have one of these statements. And again, if you don't, we'll go through the process of creating that right now. All right, so the first thing we're going to do to create this diversity, culture, inclusion statement is go back to your company. Again, listing out those core values, the mission, the vision, the product, and the service that you offer. And then on the other side, diversity and inclusion, we want to have a sort of define what diversity, culture, inclusion looks like. And some of these words are interchangeable. Some of them mean really specific things. So some organizations will use diversity and equity. Some organizations put in inclusion as being something that's different from diversity and inclusion. So whatever it is that your company is doing as a standard. But either way, you want to have a set definition of what these words are. And then you want to make sure that that definition is being reworked to incorporate the things you're doing within your organization. And then, of course, you want to see where these terms are fitting in with your company's goals. How do they align with what it is that your company is looking to do? Why is diversity valuable? So for example, to like a marketing agency, diversity and inclusion is valuable because your clients are looking to hopefully market to a wide group of people, right? So that's how that fits into that specific sector. But how does it within your organization? So you take those two things, once you write all that down, in the statement overall you're looking for obviously a level of authenticity, authentic to not only the people who work there and their experiences and your experiences, but also authentic to the organization and the thing that you offer, right? Is it specific to you? So you know, when you're looking at STEM and in terms of software in particular, which is the field that I'm primarily in, creating a authentic and specific statement around diversity and inclusion in software means that you're writing for accessibility, right? You're building websites for accessibility. You're building websites to reach a wide range of people, especially with sort of this in the international scope of software development. And so once we have that base definition, this is the general layout. So essentially it'll read diversity and inclusion means, or equity and inclusion means, and then that definition that's tied back to your company's mission or core values. It is important to us because, again, for a marketer, you know, it's important because it means that they have a better understanding of the market that they're trying to market to. And how exactly are you trying to achieve culture and inclusion and diversity within your organization? So one or two core things. That could be creating more equitable pay services, or trying to give back to community by lending out your space to meetups and things like that. And then lastly, you want to send out an invitation to the potential candidates to join the company. They would also be joining in that conversation if they would like. And so this statement here that we're looking at, the equal employment opportunity statement, is usually what we see, right? We see a lot of these throughout our own personal work life.
Should companies switch this equal opportunity statement for the inclusion diversity statement they create?
So the goal isn't to switch out this EEO statement for the inclusion statement. We want to include our new statement as part of the job description. Oftentimes, these statements are at the bottom or of just like they have their own separate pages on the website, and they're a general company policy, and it's usually, again, at the bottom of their websites, at the bottom of the career page. And chances are that when a candidate sees some of those keywords within these statements, they're not going to read all the way through, right? The thought being, well, of course, companies have to put this on their site as part of their job application. But writing an inclusion statement that's specific to your organization means that you're creating something that's really resonating with the candidate on a personal level. And again, that's about giving you an advantage in terms of making your company and organization stand out, but also means that you put in the time to actually think this through and think about how it's applicable to what you're doing. So this is an example of an inclusion statement. I'll just read it here quickly and kind of highlight things. So Common Services is committed to the goal of building a strong, connected community by providing training and job support for adults and youth, improving the climate of local businesses, as well as creating affordable housing for people of our county. So this blue part is highlighting the mission of the organization, Common Services. The goal is to build a strong, connected community. The red is highlighting how they do this, right, the service that they provide. And then the last sentence, consequently, we believe in the value and benefits of upholding diversity and creating equitable relationships with the communities we encounter. So this green part is highlighting why this is important to their work and why having this statement and having this built into what they do adds value to how they engage back with the community. Are there any questions out there? If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the question box, and we will we'll get to them. All right, so now we kind of really go into the core of this, which is after you have those more templated pieces of your job description, writing the actual job description itself. And before we jump into that, I kind of want to take another quick break here for us to take a poll. The question being, does your company have a formal template for writing job description? Do you know where to go to if you have a new position that's coming up, whether it's an internship or whether it's just another position? Do you know exactly where to go? Do you have a formula that you can turn to right away? And the answers to that are yes, we have a formal template. No, we have an informal template, or you have something that you've been using along the way, or no, simply we don't have a template. You essentially have to go through and search the internet and figure something out, or if you're just not sure. All right, we'll keep this open for about 15 seconds as we watch some of the results come in here. And if you haven't voted, you have about 10 more seconds here. All right, any last voters out there? All right. Okay, great. Sounds good. So let's see. All right, so 36% of you said yes, we do have a formal template. 29% said yes, but it's an informal template. And again, 29% of you said that they don't have, and 7% just aren't sure. So I think what these numbers are telling us here is that there's definitely potential for some inconsistencies throughout the job description process within your organization, which means that again, you're not telling really a consistent story, and this, again, is something that you could really leverage with your company's brand in terms of attracting candidates. So let's jump back into that core part of the job that you essentially have to reformulate each time you have a new position, if you don't already have one. The things that we really want to answer, within this are 3 core things. So the first thing is this job exciting to the candidate who's applying, right? So essentially what we're establishing here is a candidate profile. What type of person do you want for this position? What types of personalities, experiences, things like that are you looking for? The next part is, do they have the prior experience in order to be successful? And part of this means defining what success looks like for this position. So I think for internships, it's even more important because they're going to be there for a set amount of time. So you want to know success for this internship, for this intern, means that they've completed X, Y, and Z, that they learn how to use A, B, and C, and that we get out of it X, Y, and Z, right? And the third question is the day-to-day. So what are the core responsibilities of this position? What do they do when they come in? Is that something that you have sort of already planned out for the most part? And this, it doesn't have to be 100% written in stone, but if they walk in there for the next week and you went on vacation, would they know what to do? And hopefully that wouldn't happen like the first week. All right, so let's go ahead here and look at a job description. We're actually going to look at the before and the after. So this is, again, for sample media, and it's for a producer position. As you can see, there's a lot going on in this job description. I think part of its strength is that it's trying really hard to make sure that they get the right person. There are about 60 bullet points within this position, and I would say that it's definitely really, really difficult to digest, like just even reading through it. And I actually believe this was about 3 pages originally. I had to cut it down a little bit to fit it within here. And so, one of the things obviously is that there's a lot of bullet points, and studies have shown that having this many bullet points can actually deter individuals from certain populations from applying. And then also you can see that it's not really broken up in a way that's very easily digestible, right? And this was the after for this position. So at the top part, we have, these are more department statements versus the company statement, but still kind of the general idea. You get an overview of how the culture is within the organization. The next part where it says, for example, while working on a program that gives you an idea of some of the general responsibilities. Then the part after that gives you some of the day-to-day responsibilities. What you've done gives you an opportunity to see whether or not your skill sets match, as well as obviously any additional skills that might be desirable for that position. This last piece, again, before when we talked about the inclusion statements and the company and the culture statements, that they don't all have to be in that order. In this particular case, it worked out best to have that what we value piece, that culture and company statement at the end of it, and then end it with a, sounds like you, apply. So the feel for this is meant to be, this is a position, this is what we're looking for, this is what you'll be doing if you're excited about this, and then these are the things that we value within the organization. All right, so the next part here, as we're heading towards wrapping up, are looking at some of the best practices when writing job descriptions. Again, limit the number of bullet points because studies have shown that can deter against certain populations from applying. Avoid company jargon unless you define it. So these are some of the terms that you might want to include as part of your intranet. That way, once you're onboarding people, they can get acclimated to that language. You want to limit any perks that are really specific to like certain groups, or you want to share all the perks to show that you have benefits that benefit essentially most people. This piece here around transparency for the application process is something that I think overall we all kind of need to work on, right? So that would be making sure that you list out when interns should be potentially hearing back from you, how many interviews are they going to go through, is it two phone interviews, one in person, all of that details is incredibly helpful in terms of helping them prepare for the process. Is there a challenge that's tied into it? Is there a code challenge, something like that? And will you kind of be asking them to do anything active within that interview process? So just being really transparent about that. Obviously, highlighting dress codes for interviews, in-person interviews, and then lastly, when they should expect to hear a final yay or nay.
I have a question for you, Caroline, regarding the transparency around the application process. Is it what are your thoughts on getting back to everyone who contacts you? Is that something that people should expect from a company, that if you apply that you at least get a Dear John letter saying, sorry, whatever, or this is when our application process starts? Can you say a little bit about that?
That definitely depends on your capacity as an organization. If you are receiving, 200 applications for a position, which does happen for companies, you may not have time to go back and kind of respond individually. What I would say kind of covers all of your bases would be to send a confirmation email letting them know that you received the job application, and that if they're in the running for the next position, or if you want to follow up with next steps, then that they'll get back to you within, say, 2 weeks. right? So then they know that after 2 weeks, if that hasn't happened, then they're probably not in the running anymore. Something else to point out is sometimes individuals who apply for interns, you might find someone who you think is a better fit, but you want to stay in contact with the other intern just in case. Some of them might be wrapping up school. There could be other potential. So you want to keep an eye out for those individuals too, and just kind of have a running list of that. You never know what the future holds. All right, so some other things I want to go through here really quickly is that you want to test different things out, because all of this really matters in terms of the region that you're in and the sector that you're in. So for example, salary negotiation, I think this applies a little bit more to just candidates who are outside of the internship program, but including sort of a salary negotiation piece within the job description decreases gender pay gaps by a certain percentage. Obviously, post in different places. That really depends, again, on where you are geographically. And make sure that you're staying informed about best practices around language, around job description, and also just around your market in particular. And those are some of the things that we do here at 26 Letters, helping organizations with that process. All right, and last but not least, it is incredibly important that you define that intern-employee relationship, right? It needs to be a reciprocal relationship, meaning that you're communicating what it is that they get from being there and working with you and for you, and that you're also clear about what you expect to get back from them. And so in addition to just kind of laying out the basics, you get paid X amount and we have free coffee and things like that. And by the way, those are great perks. I remember when I was interning, just having free coffee and donuts even on a Friday was like, an additional plus for a particular position. But you want to share other advantages. And so that would be, are there any kind of like reimbursements, travel, bus passes, things like that? Are you working, or will they be working on a really interesting project that they can include in their resume? So I know an individual who is working on like cutting edge work around heart disease, and so that's something that he could include as he was applying to grad school. And so that's actually one of the reasons why he picked like this specific internship, was just so he could focus on that. So if you can highlight some of those key unique experiences that they'll get that they can add on to their future, that will be a great plus for you. And that could be something that you either do in the job description or within that first phone interview that you have with them. You can also highlight some of the ways that your organization interacts with other organizations, or if there's any other network connections that they can make as well. So just kind of be a little bit creative about what are the things that they're going to learn and that they're going to get out of this experience, in addition to obviously working for you in that experience, but what are they going to get in the future, right? And so just going to go into our last poll here. And this is something that I care really deeply about. And so the question here is, does your company have the resources to recruit and retain diverse talent? And so you can say, yes, we do, no, we don't, or I'm not sure. This is one of the things that I think is crucial, especially for small businesses, is to be able to not only attract really great talent, but retain them, because as we know, oftentimes individuals will go to companies, and if the culture isn't a great fit, if they don't feel like they're really included and are part of the community, that they'll go then to other organizations. You don't want to spend all of that energy, really uplifting individuals, and then for them to leave based on something that could have easily, hopefully easily been addressed. So let's see here. We'll leave this open for 15 more seconds. So any last-minute voters out there, please engage. All right, 5 more seconds. Awesome, thank you. So we have 67% saying yes, we do. That's fantastic to hear. 13% no, we don't, and 20% I'm not sure. So for those who said I'm not sure, I would definitely reach out and see if you can find out more information about that. But again, if you ever need any help or just want to reach out to us with questions, feel free to do that. You can also go onto our website, 26letters.co/resources, to sign up for our mail letter, our email newsletter, and there you can also find other additional resources, including this workbook, which will also be sent out by Becky here shortly. All right, thanks so much for having me.
Caroline, thanks so much for joining us today. This is awesome. Here, do we have any? Oh, thank you, Caroline. Great stuff. Okay, thanks for that comment. And if you have questions, now is the time to submit them. We just have a couple more things to review, and then we will be done. So go ahead and type your questions in. I'm going to move on to a couple things to wrap up, but we will be happy to take your questions here for a couple more minutes. I just want to thank you again, Caroline, for joining us today. I learned a ton. I'm sure this has been really helpful content to our audience as well. As Caroline mentioned, we will send out a link to the recording of the webinar along with a workbook, as Caroline mentioned, and we will include that for everyone who's registered, and it will also go out to those who couldn't make it. I wanted to let you know that we do have another webinar scheduled next week, Wednesday, March 28th, 2017 from 11 to noon. And in this webinar, we're going to be talking about how to host a successful internship for you and your student. I'm super excited about this webinar as well. You're going to be featuring two of the SciTechsperience employers, Lauren Horsager from Mobile Composer and Courtney Jones of Rebiotics. We do have a couple of other recordings available from previous webinars as well. There's an overview of the SciTechsperience internship program that's available on scitechmn.org, and that's at the bottom of the employer page. And there's another great webinar on interviewing called Interviewing Interns, How to Find a Great Fit for Both of You, that's available right now on YouTube and will be available shortly on the SciTechMN website as well. All right, so let's see. We got kind of a last call for questions here. In the meantime, just thank you so much to all of you for joining us today. Our contact information is on the screen. Please feel free to get in touch with any questions that you have. Let's see, any questions? Jonah, I'm not seeing anything come through. All right, well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us, and have a really great day.